Lately, a common interaction I've had when talking about or sharing my photography is, why can't I find those types of places? Or, yeah, I want to take weird and random photos like this too, but I have no idea where to go to find those types of subjects. So in today's video, I thought I'd share some easy ways that I've maximized my chances of finding these types of weird and wonderful images. You know how they say that sitting next to running water for half an hour or an hour can significantly improve your mental health or just reset your balance a little bit? I get it. Might just sit here all day and not bother taking any photos, to be honest. I could even have a little nap. Let me just quickly start by touching on where I think most people go wrong if they are wanting to photograph scenes like the ones we're talking about in today's video. And ultimately, it just comes down to not thinking hard enough about where you're going with your camera. I used to pick most of my photography locations simply based on how beautiful an area was. Is there mountains? Is there a lake? Are there vast fields? And so on. But I never really thought, well, what am I likely to find there, regardless of whether the area is beautiful or not? Will I stumble across anything random, obscure, or unique while I'm there? And I think this is the vital question that you have to ask yourself before you go somewhere with your camera if you are wanting to find these random but interesting scenes. For example, somebody that visits New York City might choose to go up the Empire State Building. Of course, everyone wants to do that if they visit New York City, but the chances are you're not going to find something random, weird, obscure, and crazily interesting up there. And there's nothing wrong with obviously picking a beautiful place and going there because it's beautiful, but yeah. Okay, so onto the actual easy things that I do to try and maximize the chances of me finding these obscure and random photographs that we're talking about. And I'll start off by talking about the absolute main one that I think probably maximizes your chances and definitely my chances, because that's why I'm talking about it more than any other point. And it's targeting, visiting, exploring current working or ex-working areas. And what I mean by that is, in the countryside, you've got mining, farming, quarries, energy production, water management. At the coast, you've got harbours, fishing areas. In the cities and smaller villages, you've got industrial estates, warehouses, more urban areas. You've even got like riverside areas that are common for like boating and stuff like that, maybe even some fishing as well. And these are all examples of current or past working areas, and I think these areas are where these random scenes hide. Which I know might sound really simple, but let's take a harbour for example. When was the last time you decided to go to a harbour town because you thought that you might find something weird and wonderful there, rather than going there because it looks quite pretty and it's near the coast? Speaking of industrial estates, there's one round the corner from where I live, probably about a 10-minute drive, and I often have to drive through it in order to get back to my house when I've been somewhere, and it is walkable and drivable. You know, it's open to the public, you can go and visit the businesses there and stuff. You're free to walk around, basically, is what I'm saying. And I often think, oh, there's quite a lot of photos to be had here of the old companies and bits and bobs lying around. And the other day I actually drove through, and there was a couple of smashed up cars next to a tree at the side of the road, or one of the sort of back roads, and I assume they were going to the scrap car company that operates there. But it just goes to show that these areas, because they are working, they're operating, there's a high chance that stuff come and go that make really great photos. So I'm going to do that thing that people hate on YouTube and hold the microphone, because the conditions here are kind of brutal, which is easy to see why this place didn't survive. There's absolutely no cover anywhere in any proximity for wind, rain, snow. So you see how on this side here we've got this giant tree. I kind of like coming slightly over this way a bit and shooting across kind of down there and making this portion kind of the star of the show and cutting this tree out, just because unless I'm way up there and getting the whole scene in the grand scheme of things, this tree kind of really messes the frame up a bit. You also, of course, get a much better sense of kind of the damage that's been done by the elements from here. As a wide shot, something like this is really cool. Entrance of the, what should we call that, the shed? It's not really a shed. I really like this tree up here that's kind of sweeping out and kind of disconnects itself from this bigger one. We get some of that wall there. We get a little bit of the hills in the background. Sorry, it's probably going out of focus as I'm using my hand like this. But as I'm holding the video mode here, this is the frame I've got in my mind of taking. So I'm going to shoot that right now. Okay, so holding the mic again just to make sure that you can hear me. The second thing I like to do to maximize my chances of taking the types of photos we're talking about in this video is to go on Google Maps and instead of just going straight to like hot spots or, again, really beautiful spots, is to look for slightly lesser visited areas, quieter areas, but then within there look if I can still see signs of activity or life. So for example, in my last video I went to this little area of the coastline, and when I looked at it on satellite view I saw this little boat parking area. I'm sure there's a proper name for that, but let's call it a boat parking area. And when I saw that I was like, okay, so there's boats about, there's likely going to be people wandering around and maybe a few other bits and bobs to find there. And if you watch that video, you will have seen that I shot a bunch of photos of more wheelbarrows than anybody could ever need at any time in their life. This is the definition of random, weird and obscure yet wonderful photos. And I had no idea those wheelbarrows were there. Absolutely no idea. It was just that I went there because I had the intuition that something was going to be there. And I would say I think this is why I often combine these random photo walks with stuff that I would do anyway, like taking the dog for a walk, going for a coffee. And when you do that, even if you don't find anything, you've done something that you probably would have done anyway. Take the dog for a walk or gone for a coffee, that's a nice thing to do anyway. So if you take your camera along and you stumble across something really cool and wonderful, then fantastic. If you don't, then you were doing that anyway, going out and doing whatever you were doing. So that kind of leads me nicely onto my next point, but I'm just going to get into maybe a little bit more of a sheltered area. So yeah, just one more quick thing to think about that has resulted in a lot of these types of images for me is giving yourself a reason to go somewhere that you probably wouldn't go, and then just seeing what you find along the way. And a good example of this would be the postbox video that I made 2 or 3 videos ago, I can't remember, but if you didn't see it, basically I went around, I mapped out kind of a circle in the countryside, drove around it and photographed post boxes, which sounds very random, but there was a reason for it. Go and watch the video after this one if you haven't, if that sounds at all interesting to you in any way. But basically I wouldn't really go to many of the places around that route specifically for photography. Too much of a drive for too little reward. But because I was already going there anyway to do a circular route to photograph these post boxes, I was already going there, and along the way I found lots of bits and bobs that I wouldn't be exploring that area randomly, I don't think, because there's just little interest there for me. I think this kind of mindset pairs itself really nicely with places that you might want to visit. Let's say a little village or something that's a bit of a drive, and you think, well, it's about an hour in the car and I would probably only spend about 30 minutes to an hour at the village and I will have seen it all, so I'm not really sure whether it's worth the journey. Well, that's where this comes in handy. If you give yourself a reason to be in that area, aka go to that village, but then drive off route, maybe give yourself a little circle like I did, maybe stop at a few other little villages along the way that you're not familiar with. And before you know it, you will start noticing these random obscure things along the way. You might even come across something major. You never know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in again. And hopefully the tips helped you in any way, shape or form. And if they didn't, then hopefully you just enjoyed coming along with me and nattering, taking some photos. Because that's what life's about, isn't it? Gonna go home now and get a hot beverage and chill out. But that particular metal kind of strange kind of farm, that is going on the top of the list for this project. Anyway, yeah. See you in the next video.